So look, in this video, I'm going to break down 3 simple tactics you can start using today in order to generate way more sales from your podcast for your business. So this really is specifically for entrepreneurs and experts with podcasts who have been podcasting for a couple of years and you're still stuck with slow growth, no leads, and a podcast that doesn't seem to gain traction. Things seem to be stuck at a slow and steady pace. So if you want to stop all of that and you want to start generating way more money and ROI for your show, I want to give you again 3 very simple tactics that if you start implementing today will drive way more sales from your podcast. Now, tactic number 1 is this: stop prioritizing interviewing guests on your podcast. Look, if you're an entrepreneur and expert and you want to generate more sales for your business, that means that your audience needs to build the like, know, and trust with you, the host. Now, what happens is when you get a guest onto your podcast, they're the person who's positioned as the authority, not you. Now, this is a big problem because if you want your audience buying stuff from you, your courses, working with you one-on-one, your programs, whatever that might look like, they need to see you as a person of authority, the person helping them solve their deepest problems. Now, why this is a massive issue when you have guests onto your show is, look, imagine for a second you went to a conference and it was all about personal development, for example, and you listen to one of the guest speaker called Fernando, and he shares this incredible story about how he went from having crippling anxiety to then becoming extremely confident to the point where he's now speaking on stage to thousands of people with confidence. He talks about his backstory, the pains, and he shows you how he solved his specific problems around social anxiety. Now, for you, if you're someone who struggles with anxiety, you're probably thinking, wow, that's incredible. How did he do that? And you now see Fernando as a person who is an authority, someone who's gone through what you're going through and has solved that problem. Now, imagine at the end of Fernando's speech, everyone stands up, he gets a round of applause, and everyone loves Fernando. And then out of nowhere, a random person comes onto the stage and tells you how you can work with them directly to improve your personal development. Something random, something that's nothing to do with anxiety, and something you have no idea whether or not they are an expert in. You'll be a bit confused, right? And you're probably thinking, where the hell is Fernando? I want to fix my social anxiety if that's a problem you're currently facing. But this is exactly what happens when you invite other guests onto your show and then you give a CTA at the end telling your audience to buy your stuff, to join your community, to explore working with you one-on-one. There's a mismatch because you're not the person providing the value. Fernando, whoever your guest is, they're the person who's seen as authority. So if you want to start generating way more sales from your podcast, start prioritizing solo podcast episodes. Now, I know that might feel odd or strange if you're someone who isn't used to that. Maybe you feel like you work way better when you have someone else to bounce idea off of. Maybe you feel like, hey, my podcast is here to provide a platform for someone else. Whatever objection that might pop up, you have to really ask yourself the serious question of, if I have a business and I want to generate more sales from my show, and it requires me to build a deeper relationship with my audience, and the trade-off is I have to start doing more solo podcast episodes, is that a trade-off I'm willing to make? Or are you okay to stay where you are right now and not be able to generate as much sales? So to me, my encouragement to all of our clients is to do more solo podcast episodes. It makes a massive difference. One of our clients called Joshua had an outdoor sales podcast. And for the longest time, he was resisting doing solo podcasts because of that exact reason. He felt like he performed better when he had someone else to bounce ideas off of. And maybe that's you. But he decided to go for it anyway and change his strategy, and he prioritized solo podcast episodes. And within a week, he booked 4 sales calls, closed 3 deals, and generated $16,000 in sales from his podcast by turning listeners into clients. And it's because when he did the solo episodes, he was the one showing and sharing his expertise, proving to his audience why they should work with him one-on-one. That's the first thing. Stop prioritizing interview-based podcasts if you are trying to generate way more sales from your show. And start prioritizing solo podcasts where you're the person who's positioned as an authority. It will take some reps, but you will get there. You can do it. It's just another skill you might have to learn, but it's absolutely worth it. The second tactic that you can start using and copying today in order to generate way more sales from your podcast is to simply niche down. Stop being so broad with the topics you cover on your show. Now, what do I mean? We're using the Fernando example, right? Let's say Fernando wanted to start a podcast and he was super into personal development, but he had a coaching program that was actually all about how to overcome social anxiety in 90 days. But he has a mad passion for personal development. So he decides, you know what, I'm going to make a general personal development podcast talking about different things, about mental resilience, about how to keep motivated, about maybe some topics on anxiety, and maybe some topics just around general business and developing yourself as a leader. So he starts this podcast, and 2 years in, he's struggling to understand, well, why isn't this show monetizing? And why am I finding it so hard in order to grow? Now, for his end, he thinks that I can capture a bigger audience because I'm covering so many different interests. The show is basically for anyone who's into personal development. Now, while this is a logical train of thought, what Fernando fails to see and what so many podcasters fail to see is that by having a podcast that's super broad and generic, that gives you the freedom to talk about a wide range of topics. All of those topics might not be targeted or relevant to one particular person. What do I mean? Let's say, for example, you start with covering anxiety, and then you went to meditation, and then you went to building a business. Now, let's say a huge portion of your audience actually struggle with anxiety, but you've covered that once, and they love that episode. And then the next episode is about meditation, and then the next episode is about building a business. But they came in to discover your podcast, which is about social anxiety. They love that episode, but the next ones, they weren't really that relevant to them, so they never come back for more. You're not able to nurture a relationship long enough for them to want to desire to work with you. Whereas if you had a focused podcast all about social anxiety and you presented your podcast rather than your podcast being about a general topic, which is personal development overall, and you focus your podcast on solving a specific problem your audience are going through. The ideal clients that you want to reach, what are the specific problem they are facing? And if you focus your podcast to how to remove or how to overcome social anxiety as a high performer in corporate, for example, when you get that specific and someone who is in corporate, who has got social anxiety and is a high performer, when they discover your show, firstly, they're way more likely to click play and listen. Secondly, because every single episode is helping them solve that painful problem, they're going to keep coming back for more, which allows them to build that like, know, and trust with you, which is what you need if you want them to eventually buy your stuff. You need to have that like, know, and trust. And finally, when they finally see all of your content that's super dialed in and focused, you're the one positioned as the expert that knows how to solve their problem. So what do you think that does for your ability to convince them to want to work with you? What do you think would happen at the end of the episode when you mention a CTA of, hey, by the way, if you want to work with me one-on-one to help you overcome your social anxiety in the next 90 days, I have X, Y, and Z program. Click the link in the show notes if you want to explore working with me one-on-one. What would happen to your ability to convince your listeners to take action on your CTAs? Well, it actually blows up because you've gone from being super broad and generic to becoming way more specific. People see you as a go-to expert. They build that like, know, and trust. Every single episode adds a depth to you and your knowledge. So when it comes to you presenting an opportunity to buy your stuff, join your community, your courses, work with you one-on-one, your audience are way more likely to act. So there you go. That's tactic number 2. Stop being so broad with your podcast and start becoming way more focused on helping your audience solve one specific painful problem they're going through. So look, you might be in a spot now where you are prioritizing solo podcasts, which is great. You're positioned as an expert people should buy from. And number 2, you're being seen as an expert people should buy from because you have a focused podcast all around solving one specific painful problem for your audience. Now, you might have all of these 2 pieces in place, but if you don't have the final tactic in place, all of this won't matter. Because if you want your audience to join your community, buy your stuff, you have to be able to craft a powerful call to action that convinces your audience to actually take action. And most podcasters don't really have a proven call to action formula that they might say in the middle of their podcast episode or right at the end of their podcast episode that convinces more of their listeners to take action, to join a community or buy their stuff. But there's a simple solution for this, and that's the PAS framework. PAS. Pain, Agitate, Solution. So here's how it works. Where you've just finished talking about a particular topic, in this case, let's say social anxiety in corporate spaces, and how that might be holding your audience back from actually moving up to the next level within their career. At the end of that episode, you want to use a PAS framework to say your call to action. Start with the pain, agitate that pain, and then give them a clear solution to solve that pain. So it starts off by calling out the pain. Hey, have you found yourself stuck in the same corporate position for the last 3 years because your social anxiety keeps holding you back from speaking out in meetings or contributing more during social situations? That'll be the problem. They have been stuck for 3 years, unable to move because of their social anxiety. And they want to agitate this. Is it frustrating because you see other people who are way less qualified get promotions and move up the chain? And is it starting to feel frustrating because you see other, maybe newer employees and team members who are seemingly getting promotions just because they're way more confident and don't have social anxiety holding them back? And you're watching them move into executive roles, even though you know you have way more experience. That's me adding salt to the wound. And then finally presenting a solution. So look, that's why I created my social anxiety free blueprint to help you overcome anxiety over 90 days. That would be a random example. If you're interested in this, go to the show notes, click the first thing that you see, book a time to speak with me personally while I create a roadmap to help you overcome your social anxiety. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not a perfect CTA. I'm kind of riffing up the top here, but that is how you would give the CTA. And it flows something like this. Hey, have you found yourself stuck in the same corporate position for the last 3 years because your social anxiety keeps holding you back from speaking out in meetings or contributing more during social situations? Is it frustrating because you see other people who are way less qualified get promotions and move up the chain even though you know you have way more experience? That's why I created my social anxiety free blueprint to help you overcome anxiety over 90 days. If you're interested in this, go to the show notes, click the first thing that you see, book a time to speak with me personally while I create a roadmap to help you overcome your social anxiety. And that is how you want to end your episodes, with that PAS framework. This will get your audience to the point where you've called out the problem they're going through, you've agitated it to a point where they feel a certain level of urgency to want to fix it, you show them what they're actually missing out on by not solving this problem, and then finally just present a very simple solution with clear steps on how they can take it. So there you have it. Those are 3 simple tactics that you can use to generate way more sales from your podcast. Number 1, stop prioritizing interview-based shows and start prioritizing solo podcasts. Number 2, stop being so broad and topic focused and start being more focused around a problem you're looking to solve for your audience. And finally, use the PAS framework at the middle or at the end of the episode when you give a call to action, inviting your audience to buy your stuff. So look, with that being said, my name is Anthony Maneri. Over the last 5 years, my entire adult life has been around helping podcasters, entrepreneurs, and experts grow podcasts that builds their personal brands and attracts dream clients to their business. If you've just discovered this and you resonated, you like what you're hearing, you feel the vibe, that's good. I appreciate it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe and go through the back catalog. Look, I'm making this YouTube channel to give you the clarity you need as to why your show isn't growing or monetizing as fast as you like. And then hopefully, I'm hoping, giving you very simple solutions that are found over the last 5 years, working with hundreds of clients in order to solve those problems. So that being said, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.